Hey guys. This is part 3 of What If Naruto is hiding her identity, and secretly a girl. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start.
We are pain, that's all. We are God.
Chapter 11, Monsters Don't Need Shields, Children Do. Shikaka's POV. It was a nice change from the pub, which had unfortunately been destroyed in the invasion. At least the food was good, but the lack of booze was troublesome. He was eating his noodles slowly when voices from outside the protective canopy reached his ears. You were right. I'm sorry. Shikamaru did work hard to keep us safe. If he hadn't, we would have been overrun and then Gaara would have gotten away. The girl's voice sounded meek, and perhaps embarrassed or ashamed. You don't need to tell me that, another voice replied. This one was hard to work out. It was deeper than the other but not overly masculine. Perhaps just a prepubescent boy. Legs appeared at the bottom of the canopy. One set were uncovered whilst the other was wearing bright orange pants. No matter how lazy Shikamaru is, if he says he will lay his life on the line for others, he means it. Sakura, you need to trust the other ninjas in the village instead of just your team. Shikamaru and his team saved your life in the Chunin exams, and they didn't have to in the slightest. The boy pulled back the cloth, stepping into the ramen store. He had bright blonde hair, blue eyes and slightly tanned skin. For a moment Shikaka thought he was looking at the fourth Hokage, since the resemblance was astounding, but then he realized it was the Jinchuriki. I know, Naruto, I'm sorry. The girl stayed outside the stall, her face revealing itself by Naruto holding the curtain back for her. She had pink hair and a large forehead. I promised to work on it. She gave a smile and a slight chuckle. I can't believe Sasuke saved us. That didn't sound right. His son had told him that Naruto had fought the Sans weapon. However, he watched the blonde wave off his friend, mumbling an agreement to make her walk away. I thought you were the one to save us, Teuchi questioned as Naruto sat one seat away from Shikaku, not even shooting a look at him. All the ninjas work to save the village, but if you are talking about the fight in the forest between the Sand Thing and the Ninetales, yeah, that was me, but Sakura was unconscious for it all and thinks Sasuke did it all. Naruto shrugged, not seeming to care too much. Well, the first bowl of ramen is on the house, for the one who really did stop that thing. Guy. Teuchi went to put the ramen on to cook, seeming to know what Naruto would want to eat. Thanks, I'm starved. What's this about Shikamaru? Shikaku couldn't help but ask. His son had told him what Naruto had done for everyone. The fight could be seen in the village, what with how big Gaara got and how big that toad was. It was the same one the fourth had summoned. Then it had turned into the Ninetales. The civilians had not been easy to calm. Naruto looked over at him, his blue eyes sweeping over Shikaku's appearance. Shikamaru didn't tell you? He told me about what you did and how you ended up in hospital because the battle was that intense. I'm surprised you're out already. I heal fast. Naruto shrugged. When we went after Gaara and his siblings, we had ninjas following us. We talked over the situation and Shikamaru volunteered to be decoys so the rest of us could go on. He knew it was dangerous, and Sakura doubted he would actually come through, but Shikamaru can be reliable when you need him to be. Shikaka had once asked his son what he thought of Naruto. Shikamaru had responded that he was funny and that he didn't think there was anything wrong with him, nothing to warrant the abuse he was subjugated to. Shikaku had been glad to hear that, especially when he found out his son had defended Naruto in class, even though he barely knew the boy. However, now he was wondering if Shikamaru's thoughts had changed, evolved past the other ninja just being funny. Perhaps they were allies or friends. Shikaku also found himself pondering what the blonde thought of his son. Those questions could easily be answered though. It sounds as though you defended Shikamaru to your friend. Are you friends with him? Naruto slurped down noodles, seeming to think over his answer before turning to the Jonin. I don't know. Shikamaru seems to like getting on my nerves, and he's lazy, though you would know that. But I know he will have my back, even if he complains about it first, and I hope he knows I'll have his back too. He seems like a pretty good fighter too, but not very motivated. I had to push him into fighting that fangirl. Shikaku found himself chuckling. So that had been you? He had seen his son fall into the arena. Others had commented on his eagerness, but Shikaku had known someone pushed him. He just couldn't see who from his seat. While still shoveling noodles into his mouth, Naruto nodded. With a thick swallow, he spoke up. That slacker could have won if he had just tried a bit harder. Who would have thought that he was hiding a brain in that head of his? But Shikamaru is a nice guy and he's pretty cool to hang out with. Even if he does alternate between sleeping and yelling at me at times. So yeah, he is my friend. Just don't tell him that. With a chuckle, Shikaku slurped up the last of his noodles. Well, Shikamaru seems to think highly of you. He told me all about your fight. He pulled out his wallet, beckoning Tucci over, handing him some money. This is too much. Tucci tried to push the change back into Shikaku's hand, but he wouldn't accept it. Use it to help pay for Naruto's meal. The blonde looked up from his third bowl at hearing those words. He sucked up the noodles hanging from his mouth before wiping his lips with the back of his hand. Thanks a lot. Shikaku gave a wave as he walked off. His wife was comforting her friend who had lost her husband during the invasion, which meant she wouldn't be home for at least another few hours. He could have more time to relax before the inevitable conflict broke out yet again. When he drew closer to his home, he found his son sitting on the porch, staring at a shogi board. He looked up when Shikaku sat across from him. Do you want to verse me? Shikamaru asked. When he received a nod, he started resetting the board. You can make the first move, Shikaku assured. For 10 minutes the two simply moved their pieces, not speaking a word to each other. Finally, Shikaku looked at his son. Have you eaten lunch today? Huh. Oh yeah, I had lunch at Choji's. I had to get out of the house. Mom was muttering about a monster. Shikamaru frowned. Is that why you left too? Your mother and I have a difference of opinion over another ninja and a particular technique they used. It's nothing to concern yourself with. Shikaku moved a piece, trying to box Shikamaru into a corner discreetly. The younger boy studied the board intensely. You mean Naruto, don't you? What makes you say that? I'm not stupid. People have been mistreating Naruto for years. Dad, why do they treat him like that? Shikamaru moved out of reach of his father's maneuver before looking at Shikaku, waiting for an answer. The villagers blamed Naruto for something that was out of his control. Shikaku held up a hand when Shikamaru opened his mouth to say something. No, I will not tell you what. I'm not allowed. Unfortunately, though, the villagers have been unkind to Naruto, causing arguments between your mother and I. Dad, what have the villagers been doing to Naruto? When Shikaku tightened his jaw, Shikamaru spoke up again. Naruto is my friend. I have the right to know what my friend has gone through and why my father, a jonin, hasn't helped him. Shikaku sighed, realizing that Shikamaru wasn't going to let this drop. It was actually surprising that the boy was pushing so hard for information. Usually he was patient, studying the situation to allow him to gather the information in a more subtle way. It seemed almost out of character for him to be so forward and aggressive. I will not tell you everything I know about Naruto. It is for him to divulge, but… Shikaku dropped his head, not able to continue to look at his son. I did try to help the boy. I should have tried harder when it was most needed though. Majority of the village, citizens and ninjas see Naruto as a monster? Yes, a monster. Some of us don't, but there is only a few of us, and unfortunately ninjas spend a lot of time out of the village, which makes it hard to keep an eye on the boy. What I mean by the fact that I should have tried harder to help him when he needed it the most is that when Naruto got attacked I wasn't able to step in until it was too late. Naruto was attacked? The shogi board sat abandoned between them as Shikamaru looked at his father with what looked like disbelief and worry. Do you remember the big fight your mother and I had? When you were around 7-8 years old? When you went to stay at the Akimichi house for a couple of weeks? Shikaku nodded. Yeah, your mother kicked me out for a while after that fight. It started because of something that happened to Naruto. See, when he was 7, the third set it up so that Naruto could live on his own, instead of staying at the orphanage. The Hokage set up an account for him that the Hokage put money in each week for Naruto to buy food and clothing and taught him how to live independently. Naruto didn't bother getting his hair cut whilst living on his own. He ended up having long hair, either because he couldn't afford a haircut or he didn't like how short the orphanage cut it. It was actually quite nice looking. However, some of the older boys started mistaking Naruto for a girl. Shikamaru looked down at the shogi board sharply, as though suddenly remembering it was there. He poked the board absently, not seeming to want to look up. Some of the villagers especially didn't like this. I'm not exactly sure why. It may have been because it was Naruto the boys were developing a crush on, or it could be because Naruto is a boy, though I don't know why that should bother them. The heart will go for what it wants, no matter the person's gender or what the parents think. His son looked up, eyes wide. So you wouldn't care, if you were one of the parents, whose son thought Naruto was a girl and liked her, well him. Naruto? Shikaka frowned at Shikamaru, wondering what had caused his sudden state. Of course I wouldn't care. Even though the village views Naruto as a monster? Which he isn't. He's kind, and loyal, truthful and resilient. There is no way that Naruto is a monster. And that is the exact reason I would have no problem with you being in love with Naruto. At the look on Shikamaru's face, Shikaka clarified. In the scenario you presented me. He couldn't understand the look on his son's face. It looked like a mixture of surprise, guilt, relief and panic. He could tell by the way Shikamaru relaxed after he clarified that he shouldn't push the subject. Shikamaru had never kept anything from him before unless he simply deemed it unimportant. If this was something worth mentioning, then he would do so when ready. Back to the point I was making. Many of the villagers did not like that Naruto was getting positive attention from their sons. It wasn't a large quantity of boys who were starting to like Naruto, but they were unconsciously encouraging others to be nice to Naruto, even friends with him. One night, I was coming back from the bar, passing by the building Naruto lives in when I heard a commotion. Some of the villagers had broken into his house, destroyed most of his property. Shikaka took a deep breath, staring at the shogi board. He remembered storming into the apartment, finding villagers with bats and metal pipes hitting the walls, the old, moth-eaten couch, the refrigerator, cupboards. He remembered hearing the high-pitched scream as a little figure scrambled under the bed as its mattress was being cut open by a kitchen knife. The villagers had looked like savage animals, and Naruto. It was hard to see Naruto as the container of the Ninetales when the childish face of said container was covered in pure fear. Dad, what happened to Naruto? Shikamaru pulled his father from his thoughts. Did they just attack his property? No. Shikaka heaved a sigh. No, they didn't. I incapacitated the intruders and had to coerce Naruto out from under his bed. He was bleeding. The villagers had made a point of ripping out Naruto's hair. Rather brutally. His head was bleeding and he was crying. I looked at him and I couldn't help but picture you. Naruto is your age. If anyone ever did that to you, I would kill them. I nearly did kill them, but Naruto needed attention at that moment. Why do you think you should have done more? Because I had noticed that the villagers were getting worse. The Hokage said he was working on dealing with them, so I just left it at that. Even now I'm conflicted about what to do. If I stand up for Naruto and try to shelter him the moment I'm not there, the villagers will get worse, but if I don't step in when the villagers start to move past simple cold shoulders and comments, Naruto gets hurt. I've never been able to find a balance, especially when there are so few of us willing to stand up for him against the rest of the village. After getting Naruto patched up, I gave him half of my paycheck for 3 weeks so that he could replace everything. I helped repair the damages to his walls and cupboards too. That's why Mom kicked you out, isn't it? Because she doesn't like Naruto, she sees him as a monster. Shikamaru seemed to deflate, his shoulders sagging so deeply that he was almost touching the shogi board with his nose. Troublesome. Shikamaru, you are a ninja. If your mother does not agree with your friendship with Naruto, simply ignore her. It is your choice who you become friends with. Reaching over, he put a hand on his son's shoulder. Yeah, thanks, Dad. Shikamaru sat up, his eyes becoming unfocused as his fingers connecting as he retreated into his mind. There was no doubt to Shikaka that Shikamaru would eventually find out what Naruto was. He just prayed that when that time came he had raised his son right. It would be a test of character for Shikamaru if he could look past the monster that Naruto kept caged within him and still be his friend. Shikaku did notice that Shikamaru acknowledged their friendship much more liberally than Naruto did. He hoped that his son did the right thing by his friend. You know, Shikaku started when Shikamaru surfaced, looking disappointed. Obviously, he had not reached an answer about why Naruto was viewed as a monster. Naruto likes you. What? Shikamaru yelped. What did he say? I mean, to make you think that? The young boy seemed oddly flustered as he almost rambled questions. Shikaku smiled. He mainly complained about you. That made Shikamaru huff. But he obviously thinks highly of you. He seems like he would be a very loyal friend. Shikamaru looked up at his father with a serious and determined look on his face. You don't need to stand up for Naruto anymore. I will, and I won't have to find a balance, because I'm not going to stand in front of him like a shield and I won't stand back and let him defend himself. What he needs is people willing to stand with him, people who will show the village that he is a caring person. Thank you for looking after him the best you could when he was younger, but now he has friends and it's our turn. Shikamaru returned to staring at the shogi board. It's your turn, isn't it? Yes, I believe so. He studied the board carefully before moving a piece, hearing his son hum and thought on how to counter it. Chapter 12: Troublesome Women. It seemed as though his parents had worked out their issues. His mother was back cooking dinners for them all, and his father was actually spending time at home. It often confused him, their relationship. His father was a high-ranking jonin, whilst his mother was only at shunin level. Not only that, but she hadn't gone on missions in a number of years, making his father the stronger one. Shikamaru had often wondered if his father had consented to marriage out of fear. When he was younger, he had even asked his dad if Shikaku wished Shikamaru didn't exist, so that he wouldn't be stuck with Yoshino. His father had informed him that even if he had never been born, Shikaku would still be with Yoshino simply because he loved her. Shikamaru found that hard to believe at times. His mother was a scary woman. She had, however, hugged him tight after the invasion. He had returned home after taking Naruto to the hospital and had collapsed in bed. It wasn't clear if he fell asleep or fell unconscious. Either way, he was lost to the world. He had only been asleep for what felt like minutes before something lifted his top half off the bed. Instinctively, he threw a punch. His attacker grabbed his wrist, pulling him into their body and holding them tight. They made shushing noises in his ear, stroking his head as their other hand held him in place. Slowly his eyes adjusted. Using the light from the hallway, he noticed long brown hair and fair skin. Mom? I'm sorry I woke you up. His mother sniffed. Is she crying? He thought, his arms coming up to hug his mother back uncertainly. Are you hungry? Do you need anything? She asked, continuing to stroke his head. No. I'm fine. Just exhausted from the fighting. He felt more than saw his mother nod before she let him go, lying him back down. Running her fingers through his hair, she smiled down at him. Look at you, my handsome little boy is almost a full-fledged man. You look so much like your father that if I hadn't given birth to you I wouldn't think there was any of my blood in you. If you wake up needing anything, just yell out. She ran her fingers through his hair one more time before getting up, kissing him on his forehead and leaving the room. He couldn't recall a time he had seen his mother act so gentle, but perhaps the attack had shaken her more than he thought it would. His mother hadn't mentioned her visiting him that night, and neither had he. It wasn't so much that he was embarrassed or annoyed, it was the fact that his mother had always been strong, frightening even. To see her worried like that had shook him. He worried that if he brought it up, maybe she would return to that state, and he wouldn't know how to help her. Instead, they continued on as though nothing had happened. Dad, why did you wake me up so early? Shikamaru complained as his mother put breakfast on the table. At least, he was fairly certain she was. He was having trouble opening his eyes. Word had reached his father that Jiraiya had been attacked whilst retrieving the 5th Hokage. Shikamaru wasn't privy to the details, but he did know that Naruto was traveling with Jiraiya. This had resulted in him getting little sleep the night before, and now his father had dragged him out of bed at 7 in the morning. We have to go to the Hokage Tower, his father replied, smirking when Shikamaru cracked one eye open in suspicion. Jiraiya has returned with the Hokage. Naruto is back? He did not suddenly look and feel awake, and he definitely added Jiraiya's name into his question. He absolutely did. Oh, who was he kidding? Even with his sleep-deprived mind, he knew he sounded too eager, and had only mentioned Naruto. His father raised an eyebrow, which wasn't good for him. The last thing he needed was for his dad to study him. So far he had kept his feelings a secret, and he wanted it to stay that way. It's good to know the idiot didn't get himself killed. Shikaku chuckled. You two have an odd friendship. Anyway, I have some errands to run before going to the Hokage Tower. I want you to come with me. He almost asked his father why, but realized that if his father wasn't giving him a reason, then it was probably simply training for when he became head of the Nara clan or some other type of training. He had noticed that his mother had taken on a rigid form since Naruto's name had been mentioned. There would come a day when he would have to confront her about her negativity towards the blonde, but that would have to wait until he had had more sleep, and perhaps when he wasn't so terrified of her. He knew he was no match for his father, and yet his father bent to his mother's wishes. Part of Shikamaru was sure that was because his father was just pathetic when it came to standing up to his wife, but Shikamaru wasn't certain and definitely did not want to learn the hard way. It took them over an hour to reach the Hokage Tower. By that point, Shikamaru had woken up enough to actually notice what was going on around him. He noticed that there were two ninjas carrying boxes out of the tower. They stopped to mention to Shikaku that Konohamaru did not take them moving the third Hokage's things well. Of course, the poor boy was still suffering from the loss of his grandfather. Everyone was still grieving the loss of their Hokage, but the village knew they had to have a new Hokage to be able to last. Walking up the stairs to the Hokage Tower, Shikamaru heard Naruto before he saw her panicked face. Come on! Are you kidding me? Naruto yelled, stomping her feet. What about Kakashi-sensei and Sasuke and Bushy Brow? Oh yeah, a blonde woman replied breezily, walking away from Naruto. I did forget about them. Naruto growled, grinding her teeth and looking ready to hit the woman. The dark-haired woman with them looked as though she was just watching everything play out, not knowing who would win. Well, if it isn't Naruto, Shikamaru said as he reached the top of the stairs. He could tell that if Naruto wasn't distracted soon, she would do something stupid. She always did. The angered look instantly left the blue-eyed girl's face. Shikamaru. What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be somewhere stuffing your face? He tried not to smirk at the little crease that appeared between Naruto's eyebrows. He also noticed that she was pouting. How about you? You're usually still asleep this time of day. Very funny. He stopped in front of Naruto, his hands in his pockets. She wasn't wrong, but he wasn't going to tell her that. My dad asked me to come along with him, but don't ask me why. Naruto opened her eyes, looking around Shikamaru to Shikaku and the two women. Hey, do they know each other? Shikamaru looked over his shoulder to see what Naruto was getting at. Greetings, Lady Tsunade, Shikamaru's dad started, bowing his head. It's been a long time. You're that kid from the Nara family? The blonde exclaimed, hand on her hip. Hope you're still taking good care of the deer. I made a lot of good medicine out of those antlers. Kid? Shikamaru wondered why a woman who looked younger than his dad acted as though she watched him grow up. Oh yes, Shikaku chuckled. The deer are fine. Shikamaru brought his hand up to hide his mouth as he leant closer to Naruto. He tried to not inhale too much since Naruto's scent had a habit of fogging his thoughts. Who's the blonde girl? And why is she talking to my dad as though she's his boss? Didn't you hear? Naruto whispered back. She's the fifth Hokage. Huh? Shikamaru leant back in surprise to look at Naruto, not believing her. How did someone so young get the job? It was Naruto's turn to cover her mouth as she leaned towards Shikamaru, her breath brushing his ear as he turned his head to listen to her. And she's no girl. She's actually an old lady in her 50s. His eyes widened. Scrutinizing the woman's appearance, he couldn't see any wrinkles at all. She looked as though she was in her mid to late 20s. The woman walked away, saying goodbye to Shikamaru's dad, the dark-haired woman following after her. So long. Naruto grinned. We're going to the infirmary. She ran off only to stop at the step down, turning to look at him. I'll see you later, Shikamaru. I'll show you the killer new technique I picked up. With that, she ran off down the stairs. He honestly couldn't read her at times. He couldn't tell if she just wanted to show off her new technique, or if she wanted to spend time with him. He supposed that if she did show him the technique, she might want to go get lunch with him afterwards. He sighed. Yeah, only if she wanted someone to pay for her. With a little shake of his head to push those thoughts away, he turned to his father. That's really the fifth Hokage? Watch it, Shikamaru, his father warned, walking closer to him. He put his hands on his hips and leant forward, a smirk on his face. That woman is one of the strongest ninja you will ever meet. Don't let her good looks fool you. Yeah? Shikamaru turned to look more easily into his father's face. He realized then what the smirk was about. Shikaka thought that Shikamaru found Lady Tsunade attractive. He supposed she was pretty, but he had more just been surprised with the information than anything else. After all, there's a reason she's the only female among the legendary Sannin. Okay, he sighed, realized that the fifth Hokage was on the same level as Naruto's pervy new sensei. But I mean a woman Hokage. Not to sound prejudiced or anything, but is that such a good idea? His dad grumbled in annoyance at Shikamaru, giving him a disapproving look that was almost comical. Come on. You know what they're like. You can never figure them out. You never know where you stand with them. The smallest things could put you on their bad side. He couldn't help but think of Naruto, who always seemed so friendly towards him, only to insult him and yell at him. Then there was the incident in Choji's hospital room where she held his hand and was caring about his injury. That moment came to mind often. Always playing little mind games with you. Trying to make you do what they want. They're just a big pain basically. His dad straightened up, releasing air through his nose in a grumble before slinging an arm over his son's shoulder. Listen, Shikamaru, keep in mind that without woman you and I wouldn't even exist. He really did not want to have the talk on the Hokage Tower, in the open, with his father giving him that amused smile when all he wanted to do was sleep and maybe have lunch with Naruto. He wasn't stupid, he knew how babies were made. And take my word for it, they make men better people than we ever would be without them. Shikaku removed his arm from Shikamaru's shoulders, moving to walk into the building. Unlike us, even the strongest of them isn't afraid to be gentle with the man she loves. It's funny to hear him talking like this, tied to Mom's apron strings the way he is. Shikaku laughed. Someday you'll understand what I'm talking about. He suddenly seemed to remember where they were. Oh wow, we better hurry up. Let's finish up our business here and get back. You know how your mother will chew us out if we're late. Come on, Shikamaru. Well, if a woman made him a better person, I'd hate to see what he was like before. It turned out that he was not able to meet with Naruto for lunch or to see her new technique. His dad kept him busy seeing what it took to be the head of the Nara clan and the Jonin commander. It was an exhausting day, resulting in Shikamaru having no time to relax until after dinner. There was still some dying light from the sun hovering in the village, but a chill was setting in. Taking a lazy stroll by the lake, he simply enjoyed the quiet. Looking around, however, he saw a young girl, around 8 or 9, with 2 orange ponytails standing up on her head and big black eyes. There were 2 unusual things about her appearance. One was that she was wearing goggles on her forehead exactly like the ones Naruto used to wear, and the other was that she was walking on the lake. For someone so young, it was impressive that she could maintain the chakra in her feet whilst on water. Scratch that. She fell, flailing her arms and appearing to be having trouble swimming fully clothed. Shikamaru ran into the water, diving under once the water was deep enough. He reached her quickly, surfacing next to her and wrapping an arm around her tiny waist. Calm down, he said, holding her tight. I've got you. My name is Shikamaru. The girl finally stopped fighting him, looking at his face. She must have been cold, since her face turned red. Moegi, she muttered back, letting him pull her to shore. She was still very timid when she was standing on the grass, hugging herself. He decided to walk her home, not wanting her to wander around alone when she was cold. He barely caught her address when she told him it. The walk was silent, making him feel uncomfortable, especially since he was starting to realize that the red to her face was not from the temperature. "Why are you wearing goggles like Naruto's?" he finally blurted out, watching as she smiled. "You know Big Brother Naruto? He is our boss. He teaches us some things, especially Konohamaru. We wear these goggles because we want to be just like him." "How do you know him?" It took Shikamaru a moment to realize what Moegi had said, since she spoke so rapidly. "We went to the academy together, and we're friends. I saw him earlier today." He ignored the cold that was starting to make his body shake. "Wow, I was saved by a friend of Big Brother Naruto. You must be a powerful ninja too." "Naruto's best friend is powerful. He's from the Uchiha clan. I see them spending time together a lot." Moegi blushed harder. Shikamaru hoped it was because she was turning her affections towards the idea of Sasuke instead of him. When they finally reached her house, her mother thanked Shikamaru and told Moegi that she was not allowed to practice that technique again without supervision. By the time he returned home, he was shaking uncontrollably and starting to get a runny nose. Taking a hot shower, he went straight to bed. It wasn't until dusk the next day that he got to spend time with Naruto. He had walked to the store to get some tissues, since he had used the ones they had at home already. His nose was both blocked and running, which annoyed him to no end. To make matters worse, he couldn't stop shaking and his body ached. His head was foggy and in pain. He couldn't stop sweating and simply breathing was exhausting. He could have gone to the hospital to get healed to at least lessen his pain, but the hospital was still busy from the invasion. He would only feel guilty for wasting their time on something he could handle on his own. As he walked, though, he spotted Naruto sitting on a bench, leaning against the shop wall with her head tilted back and her eyes closed. She looked both relaxed and exhausted at the same time. He didn't want to disturb her. Unfortunately, he sneezed, making her look over. "Shikamaru, you look horrible." "Thanks," he replied as he collapsed next to the blonde. "What are you doing?" He already missed his K's, R's, and T's. Naruto took a deep breath, a small smile on her face. "Nothing much. I've spent all day trying to get Konohamaru out of old Granny Tsunade's office. I should not have taught him so many pranks. But when he was finally out, he said how he thought everyone was forgetting the old man. I told him we would go up to everyone in the village and make them promise to not forget him, but after we found old Granny, he decided he didn't need it. But at least is happy." "So Goose spent all day making him happy?" Asuma-sensei's nephew was a nice boy, but Shikamaru hadn't realized he was so close to Naruto. The blonde had a soft smile on her face, and although she was clearly tired, he had no doubt that she would jump up and run a kilometer to do it all over again. She seemed gentler, much gentler than she had ever been with him. "Why wouldn't I? It's Konohamaru. Even if I think it seems silly, it makes him feel better. That's what's important." She raised an eyebrow when Shikamaru blew his nose. "You really do look bad." She reached out, her cool hand touching his cheek. He sighed, moving into the touch. He whined when she removed her hand from his skin. Opening his eyes, he noticed a look of concern on her face. She brought her face close to his, searching his eyes. "You should go home. I don't think people should be that warm. And you're really pale." "I'd just a colda." He stood up, spots appearing in his sight. The world spun as Naruto jumped up. "Shikamaru!" Everything went black as he felt himself being engulfed in something warm and soft. Naruto calling his name rang through his head, lessening the pain if only for a moment before everything melted away. Chapter 13, Shikamaru. So Shikamaru obviously can't talk properly. His T's are now D's, and some of his Y's and all K's at G's. He was wet. That was the first thing to register in his mind. There was cold water above him. With effort, he opened his eyes, only to feel panic grip him. He was under the ocean. Crystal blue water was all his eyes could see. He gasped, only to realize that that would be a stupid idea whilst submerged. He couldn't breathe. He started coughing, his body lifting from its lying position each time. The ocean seemed to move back, the blue darkening. Something gripped his shoulder, pulling him up into a sitting position. The sun was in his eyes as something that felt like a hand patted his back before rubbing circles through his shirt, except it wasn't his shirt. It felt flannel, though thinner than his shirt at home. As his coughing subsided, his mind started to clear. The sun was actually strands of hair, extremely yellow, spiky hair. It brushed against his nose and cheek, allowing him to feel how soft it was. The skin of someone's neck was next to his other cheek, and was cool against his flamed skin. He pushed himself closer, his chin resting on the person's shoulder, letting loose a relieved moan. His nose was blocked, his face hot, his head clogged. His throat felt raw and bloody, his body cold, his chest heavy. The breaths he took sounded horrific to his ears. Instead, he tried to focus on the person holding him, still rubbing his back soothingly. Their hands were clumsy and small, their frame was small but solid and warm. Their warmth seeped into his body, reminding him of lying on the grass in the shade during summer. He moved more into the form, feeling it tense. They pushed him back into a lying position, his head spinning enough to make him close his eyes. The wetness was back, but this time he realized it was a wet, cool cloth. Slowly, he opened his eyes to see the same crystal blue, unnatural blue. It wasn't the ocean. It was a pair of eyes, staring down at him from a tan face set with worry lines. Naruto pulled the blankets up to Shikamaru's chest before lightly pressing the back of her palm to Shikamaru's cheek. Her skin was soft. It reminded him of the silk kimono his mother had in her closet. As a child, he had loved running his fingers over the material, even giving his mother extra hugs when she wore it just to feel the soft texture. He moved towards Naruto's hand, peppering lazy kisses over the surface. "You're really warm," Naruto stated, frowning down at him. She shifted her hip, pressing against his side. He turned towards her form, wanting the warmth to seep back into his body. The wet cloth on his forehead slipped off, onto his pillow. Naruto picked it up, dabbing at Shikamaru's face. "Don't worry. I went and talked to old lady Tsunade. She told me how to help and gave me some stuff too. I should take your temperature." "I am colda," he sniffled, wrapping his arms around Naruto's waist. "Right." Naruto detached herself from Shikamaru and walked off, only to come back with another blanket which she put around the boy, tucking in the sides. "The old lady said that can happen even if you're hot." He giggled, closing his eyes. "Hee, gu ding am hode." Something bumped into his mouth. "I know you're hot. You're also red. Open your mouth, I have to take your temperature. Keep this under your tongue." "Okay, Shikamaru?" He opened his mouth for the thermometer, making sure to put his tongue over to the top. He giggled again as he rolled onto his back. "Gu say my name werda. Most people say my name in Dupards. They drag idu do. Shikamaru. Shikamaru. Gu donned. Gu say id as one werda." "I didn't realize I was pronouncing it wrong." Naruto dipped the cloth in a bowl on the nightstand, wringing it out. She started dabbing at his flushed face again as she returned to her position on the bed beside him. Guri nod. "I like how Gu say ID. Everyone says ID the other way. Shikamaru, Shikamaru. Naruto. Naruto. Hee, your name has do an ID." Naruto frowned. "I think you mean to. My blog knows duk my D's." I didn't realize that happened. I've never had a blocked nose." "Naruto! Naruto!" he gasped. "If Gu married me, go name would be Naranara. Naruto Nara. If you were an Uzumaki, your name would be a mouthful." Naruto rolled her eyes, taking the thermometer from Shikamaru's mouth. She frowned at it before picking up a piece of paper off the nightstand. "Okay, you're not bad enough to go to the hospital." "Shikamaru Yazamaji." His eyes lit up. "ID is a mouthful." Naruto snorted, making the dark-haired boy smile. She stood up, walking from the room. Shikamaru tried to sit up to see where she was going but found he had no energy to do so. Luckily, she wasn't gone for long. When she came back, she was holding a shopping bag. She started rummaging through it as she dropped back down onto the bed. "So after I brought you here and talked to the old lady, I went and got the stuff she suggested. Tissues, cough drops, whatever this is. It's meant to go on your chest or something." She held up a small tub of something before looking at him, frowning. "You're doing that yourself. Oh, and I bought you chicken soup." The lady I bought it off says it's the best for flus. Let me know and I'll heat it up for you. Seeing the unsure and insecure look on Naruto's face, which seemed so uncharacteristic, Shikamaru put his hand on her knee. Fangu. Shigen soup would be nice. Okay, I'll go heat it up. Here, in case you need any of this stuff. She dumped the plastic bag on the bed as she stood up. When she had left the room, Shikamaru removed the tissues, grabbing one to blow his nose. After that he looked at the little tub. It was meant to clear the chest and make it easier to breathe. Taking the lid off, he put a glob on his fingers, putting his hand up the flannel shirt to smear it on his chest. It felt warm, but he could already feel himself breathing a little easier. Taking this moment, he evaluated his shirt and his surroundings. He was in an old flannel shirt that was frayed and faded. He laid in a bed in what he assumed was Naruto's bedroom, which was messy. There was clothing on the floor. Dirty pants, boxer shorts, and... He sat up so fast that his head spun and black spots appeared again. He was able to stay conscious this time, though. He studied the item before him, wishing he could stand up to prod it with his foot, just to see if it was real. It seemed so out of place. The item was white with a subtle orange flower pattern to it. The straps were nothing but orange lace, a deep orange, like that of a sunset. Although he was sure that Naruto was female, it still never crossed his mind that she would own something as girly as the shirt he saw lying on the ground. He had no doubt that it was a girl's shirt. There was no doubt in his mind. That was a girl's piece of clothing. He had no idea how long he sat and stared at that one garment, but eventually Naruto walked back and with a bowl of soup resting in a tea towel. She handed him the bowl and the tea towel, keeping one hand underneath in case he lost his grip on it. He was able to easily move the bowl onto his lap, accepting the spoon that Naruto handed him. As Naruto sat uncomfortably on the bed again, Shikamaru started eating slowly. It was actually nice soup and he could feel warmth returning to his body with each spoonful. He studied Naruto quietly as he ate. Why do you look so uncomfortable? I don't actually know what I'm meant to do to make you feel better. I'm just hoping the old lady's suggestions are good enough. Naruto shifted before consulting the piece of paper on her nightstand again. Then why did you bring me here? Shikamaru noted that he was slowly beginning to gain the ability to speak properly. You fainted in front of me and I couldn't take you to your place. Shikamaru nearly dropped his spoon into his bowl out of confusion. Why not? Naruto looked at him as though he was an idiot. I don't know where you live. Oh. When you are feeling up to it, you can direct me and I'll take you home. Naruto looked at him for a moment before rolling her eyes. Stop giving me a stupid look and eat. I'm not feeding you. Shikamaru hurriedly went back to eating. The soup worked better than he expected it to. He actually felt like he had enough strength for Naruto to take him home. First, though, he questioned where his jacket and shirt were. In reply, Naruto held them up before shoving them into the plastic bag with the tissues and other things she bought him. She did explain that they weren't keeping him warm, so she had exchanged them for one of her flannel pajama shirts. He hoped he could pass the blush on his cheeks off as fever from the flu. Whilst his net shirt didn't do much to cover him, it was still embarrassing to know that Naruto had stripped him from the waist up. After Naruto had put Shikamaru's empty bowl in the sink, Shikamaru got up to go home. The whole walk there the blonde held tight to his arm. He would have made comment about how worried she seemed to be, but her hand was the only thing keeping him up. The strength he had gained was quickly leaving him, especially in the late, cold air. He hadn't realized it was so late at night. There were only a few people in the streets, stumbling home from the pub. When he started to shiver at the breeze, Naruto made him stop. Instantly the girl unzipped her orange jacket and forced Shikamaru into it. He tried to stop her but found he had no strength to do so, especially since her hand around his waist was the only thing stopping him from kissing the dirt. He put his head on Naruto's shoulder, burying his face in her black shirt as she slipped the bright material up his arms and onto his shoulders. When she pulled away, Shikamaru noticed how close their faces were. He could feel her warm breath on his face and could see the whisker-like birthmarks on her cheeks clearer than ever before. He had, when younger, thought they were scars, but he could see for certain now that they were birthmarks. They were too neat and perfectly symmetrical. He sniffled, watching as Naruto sucked in her lips before pursing them. He had noticed that Naruto did that at times. "Don't kiss me," he suddenly yelped, leaning away from her as much as he could with her arms still around his waist. "What?" Naruto frowned. "Don't kiss me. I can breath frog my nose." Shikamaru put a hand over Naruto's mouth, as though it was the only way to stop her. "Okay, I won't." Naruto's words were muffled against his palm, but Shikamaru heard them nonetheless. His face heated up at the feel of her lips moving against his skin. It was short-lived, however, since Naruto rolled her eyes, moving the boy's hand away. "I hope the flu doesn't make everyone as loopy as you." She grabbed him by the arm again and marched off in the direction Shikamaru had said the Nara estate was located. "Naruto," she sighed. "Shikamaru, I'm not going to kiss you." "No, nah, Dad. Why do you cross-dress when you obviously like clothing for your gender?" "I don't really care about gender clothing." Naruto's eyes became slits, her grip on his arm tightening for a moment before she realized she was probably hurting him. "I buy whatever is cheap and durable. I don't buy clothing often, so the longer it lasts the better. That's why I tend to wear baggy clothing too." "So you do cross-dress?" Another sigh. "Yes, Shikamaru, I cross-dress." "Happy? What's with all the questions anyway? Why are you so interested in me?" "I'm always interested in you." He leant into her before pointing ahead. "Dad's my house." "That thing is huge." "Not really. Compared to my apartment, it is." The lights were on in the house, which either meant his parents were up late talking like they often did, or he was in big trouble. The moment he and Naruto stepped onto the porch, the door flew open. Light from the doorway was blocked by the figure standing there. It was a woman with long brown hair, rather plain features, and an apron covered in flour and cookie dough. There was a wooden spoon in one hand and there was a wild look on her face. "Shikamaru, where have you been?" His mother's eyes traveled to the one holding her son up. "And why are you with him?" "Naruto is my friend." Shikamaru dropped his head onto the blonde's shoulder, giving his mother what he hoped was a hard look. "He helped me." "He's sick." Naruto shrugged him off, fidgeting under the older woman's gaze. She turned to Shikamaru. "Next time you're going to faint, do it at your house, not the street." "What is he sick with?" his mother asked, surging forward to put her hand to his forehead. "The flu. He passed out, and I didn't know where you lived, so I gave him soup so he could walk." The words came out in a rush as she stepped away from Shikamaru. He had never seen Naruto look so out of place before, but he refused to let Naruto feel unwelcome in his house. When his mother started to usher him inside, he returned to the blonde, leaning on her for support. His mother's bony fingers tended to hurt when she was worried. Naruto seemed to focus solely on helping Shikamaru to his bedroom and deposited him on the bed. She moved to the doorway as Shikamaru's mother pulled the blankets over him and asked him a number of questions. He tried to answer them but found himself muttering something that sounded like Shikamaru as he fell asleep. The last thing he heard was Naruto. He's been pretty out of it since he woke up. The only thing he remembered after that was what he described as the most confusing dream he had ever had. Naruto was standing in the hallway outside his bedroom, the door opened just wide enough for him to see that her arms were crossed and a small part of her face. "I know that look. Who did you lose?" "My team. And my brother." His mother's voice sounded pained and had a sharp edge to it. "I'm sorry, but it isn't my fault," Naruto snapped. "I know." "Then why do you hate me?" Silence greeted Naruto's question. "Don't try to deny it." His mother sighed. "I don't hate you. I'm afraid." "Afraid? Why?" "Because my son is your age. My baby boy was in your year in the academy, he played in the playground with you, skipped class with you, my baby boy." His mother's voice broke for a moment. "Shikamaru, I can't lose him. You are dangerous. And I'm afraid that you will lose control one day, and because Shikamaru is your friend, he will be the first to get hurt." It sounded as though his mother was crying, or at least close to tears. It made no sense though. How was Naruto dangerous? And how was she connected to his uncle? Didn't his father tell him that his uncle died during the Ninetales attack 12 years ago? Naruto would have only been a baby, or maybe not even born. Naruto was younger than him after all. Mrs. Nara, my dream is to be Hokage, but I swear to you that Shikamaru's life is more important to me than becoming Hokage. Shikamaru heard himself gasp, making him pray that the two females didn't hear, even if it was in his dream. I'm still going to worry, but I won't object to you spending time with Shikamaru. Just know that if you hurt my boy in the slightest, I'll make you regret it. His mother cleared her throat. Now you should return home and rest in case Shikamaru passed on his flu. Also, I made too many cookies, so you better make sure you come into the kitchen to get some after saying goodbye to Shikamaru. He heard his mother march off before Naruto moved to the door. She opened it quietly only to see Shikamaru staring at her. Oh, you're awake? She paused. How much did you hear? Nodding, Shikamaru lied. I just woke up. Did I miss something important? Nope. Naruto smiled, walking up to the bed. She scratched the back of her head awkwardly. Well, I'm going to go. I hope you're feeling better. Wade! He yelped when Naruto went to turn away. You can kiss me. I don't mind if I can breath. The blonde frowned down at him. Really, you can? Naruto rolled her large eyes at him. Sighing, she bent down. Shikamaru tried not to breathe too heavily as she came closer and focused on not sniffling. He highly doubted the sound of his sniffles would encourage her to kiss him. Her lips pressed against his skin, and he tried not to groan in disappointment. Instead, he focused all his attention to his cheek, noticing how soft her lips were, how they weren't slippery like how Choji described Ino's, but they weren't dry or chapped either. He remembered Naruto sucking on her lips and realized it was probably due to dry lips. When she pulled away, he had to put all his strength into not turning his head to take advantage of how close they were. He already felt guilty for kissing her when she was unconscious, taking advantage of her like that. The last thing he needed was a surprise kiss on his conscience. At least he got a kiss on the cheek, and for now that would be enough. Naruto gave him a small smile as she straightened up. Thank you for helping me. Get better. You're weirding me out. With that, she walked out of his room, making sure to close his door. It was hard to tell if the darkness came from the lack of light from the hallway or him closing his eyes and falling back into sleep. He was enjoying the jacket he was wearing. It was warm and reminded him of the sun's rays. It smelt of the breeze, of warmth, and strangely of ramen. Chapter 14, Chakra. He was warm. Not the type of warm that was uncomfortable, or indicated a fever, or even the warm that meant he should lose a layer to reach perfect temperature. It was the warmth that made him want to burrow deeper into his blankets and keep sleeping. However, the faint smell of ramen was making his empty stomach grumble. Without opening his eyes, he slowly detached from the blankets, noticing that he was still rather pleasantly warm. He shuffled his feet along the floor, heading in the direction of his door. With a hand groping in front of him, he found the door handle, venturing into the hallway. Stumbling blindly, he made his way to the dining room, hoping it wasn't too late for breakfast. The ramen smell stayed with him, making him wonder if his mother had gotten them takeout for lunch, or was it dinner? He had no clue how long he had slept or when he had even went to bed. When he reached the dining room, he heard a rumbling chuckle. Well, look at that! Shikamaru frowned in the direction of his father's throaty voice, rubbing his eyes with the cuff of his sleeve. Is that rhetorical, or do I actually have to open my eyes and look at something? His father chuckled again. You look so bright this morning. So it is still morning? For another hour, yes. Your mother made you breakfast. It's keeping warm in the oven. Sit down and I will get it for you. Shikamaru peeked his eyes open long enough to find a seat before folding his arms on the table and putting his head down. The material covering his arms was slippery and rough, carrying a scent of a cold breeze and ramen, but it was warm and for some reason made him smile. He was poked hard in the shoulder, making him sit up. With a grumble, he looked up at his father's amused face. How are you feeling? Better, thanks. He brought a hand up to push his hair out of his face only to stop. He frowned at his arm, looking at it as though it was a foreign object. It certainly did not look like his arm, but it moved at his will. Looking down, he found that his entire torso looked wrong. It was so orange. Fighting to keep his voice level, he spoke to his father. Why am I wearing Naruto's jacket? Same reason you're wearing Naruto's shirt. His father nodded at the flannel collar poking out from under the assaulting bright jacket. From what your mother explained to me, you passed out in the street whilst talking to Naruto, and the boy took you back to his place until you regained consciousness and could tell him where you lived. He also dressed you to keep you warm. Instantly Shikamaru's head snapped down to look at his lap, making his father laugh. He ignored him, sighing in relief when he saw that he was wearing his own pants. For some reason the words Shikamaru and Naruto Nara kept ringing through his mind. He really hoped it was just in his head and he hadn't actually said either of those phrases out loud at any point. Unfortunately, he had a distinct memory of him speaking those words, as well as him saying something about Naruto marrying him. He groaned, dropping his head into his hands. I hate being sick. I think everyone does. Not as much as I do. Is that because you tend to say anything and everything that enters your mind when you become bad enough? His father sounded far too amused. With a glare at the older man, he picked up his fork and started digging into the meal in front of him. He would have to make sure to thank his mother for making him breakfast that was easy on his stomach. He was feeling a lot better, but he was still weak. At least he would be able to skip training today, but he would have to return Naruto's jacket. As he rinsed off his plate and put it on the sink, he remembered Naruto's arm around his waist, holding him close to her as she put her jacket on him. He blushed so hard that he became dizzy for a moment and had to grab hold of the bench. When his father looked through the doorway, distracted from the report he was reading, Shikamaru blamed it on a sudden fever spike that had passed. After having a shower, he changed and put Naruto's flannel into the wash. He would return it to her another day, but he also knew that Naruto would want her jacket back. It was rare to see her without it. She had bought it over a year ago, and Shikamaru had noticed before that she had held herself differently. For a number of months before she bought the jacket, she had slouched, cringing into herself. Every few moments she would pull the front of her shirt as though the thought of it sitting against her chest made her uncomfortable. Shikamaru had been unable to work out what was wrong with Naruto, but she had returned to normal once she started wearing the baggy orange jacket. By the time he ventured out of his house, it was noon. He stopped by Naruto's apartment first, but there was no answer to his knocks, which he expected. It was rare for Naruto to stay at home. Instead of giving up, he decided to walk through the shopping district, hoping to spot the blonde. Some areas were still under repairs, the sounds of hammers and shouting filling the streets as Shikamaru walked by. He stopped though when one particular shout was directed at him. Shikamaru! Looking around, he spotted Choji grinning and waving, standing next to a pile of wooden blanks stacked together. His friend was sweaty and dirty, but looked quite pleased with himself. Walking closer, Shikamaru put one hand in his pockets and smiled back. Hey Choji, what are you up to? Just helping with the repairs. Asuma-sensei said that you were sick. Are you feeling better now? A lot better actually, but I'm going to be taking it easy today, just in case. Choji nodded, his eyes drifting down to the object clamped in Shikamaru's hand. Is that Naruto's jacket? Scratching the back of his head with his free hand, he tried to not blush. Yeah, Naruto lent it to me last night. I was cold. That was nice of him. If you're looking for him, I saw him about half an hour ago. He said he was visiting the hospital. A beefy-looking man with skin darkened by the sun and scars on his fingers called out to Choji, asking for help. I'll be right over, Choji replied over his shoulder before smiling at Shikamaru. I've got to get back. I hope you are all better soon. With a nod, Shikamaru turned away from his friend, heading in the direction of the hospital. Naruto might not have even been there anymore, but Sakura worked at the hospital at times, and she might know where the blonde had gotten to. The only downfall to that was another person would know about him having Naruto's jacket. He only had it because he was sick and cold, and Naruto was being a good friend. However, he didn't feel like having people know. He wasn't embarrassed by Naruto having taken care of him, he just wanted to keep it a secret. Something that only he and Naruto knew the details of. As he drew near to the hospital, he heard Naruto's laugh. Halting in his steps, he looked around, noticing a group of 4. He almost didn't recognize Naruto, who wore a black shirt, looking surprisingly less bright with only her orange pants. It looked wrong to his eyes, seeing Naruto in black, but her smile helped to eliminate the dark wash to her form. She was talking with Konohamaru, Moegi, and another boy who had round glasses and snot dripping from his nose. All 3 kids had the same goggles as what Naruto used to wear. Naruto reached over and messed Konohamaru's hair, making the boy frown and slap at Naruto's hand. The blonde simply laughed. "Boss, where's your jacket?" the unknown boy sniffled. "I lent it to a good friend of mine. He needed it more." Naruto tried to poke Konohamaru's cheek, seeming to like harassing the boy. Moegi noticed Shikamaru walking towards them. Her eyes slowly slid down to the jacket in his hand before she smiled. He wondered for a moment why people noticed it so easily before realizing that his clothing was quite bland in color, something that Naruto's jacket was not. "Hello, Shikamaru," Moegi squeaked with a slight wave. Her face turned pink under his gaze. Naruto looked over her shoulder, smiling when she saw her friend. The moment Shikamaru stepped closer, Naruto moved into his personal space, putting the back of her hand to his forehead. He started to turn pink like Moegi under his friend's concerned gaze. "Good, you're no longer running a temperature." Naruto grinned. "Do you remember your name?" Shikamaru scowled at her joke. He felt her breath hit his cheek as she laughed. He was reminded sharply of the dream he had had. Naruto had come into his room to say goodbye after talking to his mother, and he had asked for a kiss. The part of his dream that he was certainly hoping to not forget any time soon was that she had agreed. She had kissed him on the cheek before telling him to get better. He kept that little fantasy to himself as he removed Naruto's hand from his forehead. He gave it a light squeeze before putting her jacket into her grasp. "Thanks for the jacket, and I'll return your shirt once it's washed," he whispered, letting his lips brush her ear. "And thank you for looking after me." Naruto pulled back, scratching the back of her head awkwardly as she smiled. "You don't need to thank me. I had no idea what I was doing." She put her jacket on, pulling her collar up around her face for a moment. She looked cozy and happy. When she let her jacket fall back into place, she instantly reached over and flicked Konohamaru's ear lightly, laughing as he frantically tried to slap her hands away. He pouted at her laughter, which only seemed to amuse Naruto more. "Big brother Naruto, stop it!" Konohamaru fought off Naruto's hand again as his 2 friends chuckled. "But it's fun!" Naruto mimicked the boy's whining tone before turning back to Shikamaru. "This is Konohamaru and Udan. Obviously you already know Moegi." "I already knew him too." Konohamaru crossed his arms before a wicked grin crossed his face. Whilst Naruto was asking Moegi how she and Shikamaru knew each other, he put his finger in his mouth before reached out, aiming for Naruto's ear without her notice. Naruto nodded at the story of Shikamaru's heroics in saving Moegi's life. It was highly embellished. Konohamaru's finger was an inch from Naruto's ear when the girl's hand shot out and grabbed the younger boy's wrist, turning his arm around and burying his finger in his own ear. Konohamaru gave a cry of disgust as Shikamaru found himself laughing loudly. Naruto clearly enjoyed tormenting the child and almost acted like an older sibling, which would explain why the children called her big brother. "Konohamaru, we have to go, we have training soon," Udan reminded them. "Well then, you 3 better hurry up," Naruto stated, letting Konohamaru out of the headlock she had put him in. "With the academy closed, you need to take every chance you can to train. Besides, I have to show you," she pointed at Shikamaru, who was trying to not chuckle at her hypocrisy, "my new jutsu." "Bye, big brother Naruto, bye, Shikamaru," Moegi said, squeaking out the boy's name. Naruto grinned, going behind Shikamaru and wrapping an arm around his shoulders. She put her chin on his shoulder, seeming to not notice how the older boy's breath hitched. "Moegi, if this one breaks your heart, let me know and I'll kick his butt. He's not to be trusted. He's broken countless girls' hearts." "No, I haven't," he yelped, turning his head to look at the blonde. His nose brushed her cheek. When Naruto turned her head to roll her eyes at him, her nose hit his. She was being oddly touchy today, and not just to him. When she wasn't touching him, she was touching Konohamaru. TSH, like you would know. Naruto looked back at Moegi. Seriously, watch out for him. He's kidding. No, I'm not. Shikamaru tried not to sigh. He had seen Naruto's playful prankster side on multiple occasions, but this teasing nature of hers was something new. He could feel her shaking with suppressed laughter, since she was still holding him to her, his back pressed against her chest. Shikamaru, if you keep denying it, I'll lick your neck. That made him jump away from her, earning a laugh out of the 3 mini Narutos. Naruto reached out, grabbing Shikamaru's hand. Come on, I want to show you my new jutsu. And they have to go train. She started tugging him away, in the general direction of the river. But I want to see the jutsu too, Konohamaru yelled after them. Only ninjas can see it. You have to graduate before I show you. That made the brunette run off to his training, allowing Naruto to pull Shikamaru's arm harder. Naruto didn't let up until they reached her usual training ground. Once they did, she let go of Shikamaru's arm, turning to face him with a large smile on her face. The fourth invented this jutsu, she gleefully told him before summoning a clone. When Shikamaru gave her an unimpressed look, she rolled her eyes, holding her hand out to the clone. The clone's hands quickly moved around the air above the real Naruto's hand. Moments later, there was a blue, spinning sphere in Naruto's hand. As the clone disappeared, Naruto grinned, moving over to a nearby tree. Making sure Shikamaru was watching, she slammed the sphere into the tree. The destruction was impressive. There was a circular chunk taken out of one half of the tree. That's amazing, he managed once he had picked up his jaw. Naruto impressed him more and more since they graduated. That is an incredible jutsu. Thanks. Naruto grinned before becoming somewhat more serious. I was wondering about the jutsu you use. Is it possible to break it, or to fight it? Of course, Shikamaru gave Naruto a small smile, easily grabbing her with his shadow before she even noticed. He gave her a cocky grin when her face scrunched in annoyance. You can try if you like. I was hoping to ask you a few questions first. Sure. You're not going anywhere. Naruto scoffed. I'm starting to think you just like controlling me. How does this jutsu work? How are you controlling my body? Shikamaru thought how best to answer Naruto's questions. The blonde wasn't always the smartest, so he wanted to word it properly. Well, simply put, I surround you with my chakra, which is why it takes a fair bit of chakra to control this jutsu. I'm suppressing yours. Ino's jutsu does a similar thing, which is why the two of us are in danger of injuries if the body we are controlling gets hurt. So I could just overwhelm you with my chakra? Not exactly. Do you know how to identify and sense chakra? Taking one look at Naruto, he realized she didn't. Everyone's chakra feels different. Yours is energetic, lively, bright, inviting, and very warm. That's how I would describe it. Can you think of something like that, where you've felt a pressure or presence that reminds you of someone? Yeah, all the time. Can you scratch my nose? He laughed, scratching his own nose and watching as Naruto's body copied his movements. When I used to pull pranks, I would feel people coming towards me and know to run. The chakra tended to be hot and kind of made me feel like I was slapped, no matter the person. Unless it was Irika-sensei who found me. I always forgot to look out for him. He was rendered speechless for a moment. Naruto had a natural talent for sensing others. It made some sense, he supposed. She did have a lot of chakra, so it made sense she could easily pulse out her chakra every now and then, unconsciously or consciously, to see if there was anyone hostile near her. The hot slap was probably the anger and hostility facing her. And yet the idiot didn't even realize she could. Okay, so you can sense chakra, you've just done it on instinct. The reason you can't overwhelm my chakra is because you can't throw it out. It's being held in your body. To overcome my jutsu, you first need to sense my chakra. Can you sense it at the moment? No. He could feel the muscles in Naruto's neck constrict before letting go. She had tried to shake her head. It was weird to see Naruto not moving around. It was rare to see her stay still for so long, though it was his doing. She was naturally energetic and wild, something that came through in her chakra. Her behavior earlier was perhaps the perfect representation of that. So caring to the three students, playful, teasing, unpredictable, and friendly. It was her chakra personified. I figured you couldn't. See, you probably usually just let your chakra out until it presses on another, letting you know someone is there. You can't do that because I'm keeping it in. What you have to do is feel my chakra holding your body. I'll up the pressure in certain areas. Close your eyes and tell me if you feel it. He focused, aiming for Naruto's hand. He had rather good chakra control, though he had never shown it at the academy. Imagining his chakra as an extension of his form, he played with her fingers, watching as Naruto frowned in concentration. He moved to Naruto's hair, playing with the strands just under her forehead protector. His chakra caressed her cheek, watching as the blonde smiled. I can feel it. Your chakra is cold. Her eyes opened, noticing Shikamaru's frown. Not in a bad way, kind of like a cold drink, or swimming in the river on a hot day. It kind of makes me feel lazy, which makes sense since it's yours. She laughed before humming and closing her eyes again. Shikamaru took a deep breath, feeling something press into his stomach. He felt himself relax, warmth seeping into his skin. This presence was caring and trusting. It was only after he noticed his shadow connecting him and Naruto disappearing that he realized what was happening. Naruto's chakra was surrounding him. Not in the same way his was suppressing hers, but more embracing him. She had swept his chakra up, returning it to him and surrounding him in hers at the same time. He was not being restrained since he still had full control of his chakra. His concentration had simply been broken. How did you know that was the next step? He asked in surprise as Naruto opened her eyes again. She actually looked surprised to see that his shadow was no longer holding her in place. I wasn't trying to break the jutsu, I just remembered that you said my chakra was warm. I thought that if yours made me feel lazy, mine might warm you and help you with your flu. He snorted, not having expected that reply. Chuckling, he smiled at Naruto. Thanks. He felt tired, more than he thought he should. Apparently his strength hadn't fully returned. Slumping his shoulders, he put his hands in his pockets. I might head home and rest. I'll walk you. Don't want you passing out again. Naruto grinned cheekily at him. She started walking in the direction of his house, letting him fall into step beside her. Oh, and thank your mother for the cookies. They taste awesome. Cookies? Yeah, she gave me some after I said goodbye to you. Swallowing thickly, Shikamaru fought the urge to look at Naruto. So that actually happened then? You mean you asking me to kiss you? Yeah, you were really out of it. You also said that if I married you my name would be Narinara, and Naruto Nara, though you meant Naruto. I am really sorry. He sighed. Everything that happened came rushing back to him in annoyingly clear focus. He had said a lot of embarrassing things, but if Naruto had came into his room, that meant the conversation she had with his mother was real. Multiple questions rose within his mind, but something told him not to ask them. Another thing occurred to him. Naruto had kissed him. He knew he should feel embarrassed, and he should remind himself that she probably had felt sorry for him, but he couldn't. Naruto had kissed him. That's all he could care about. Don't be sorry. I was really worried about you. I've never been around someone so sick before. Haven't you ever had the flu? He looked over at Naruto's guarded face. No. I've never been sick. I heal quick too. Takes a lot to bring me down, physically. She wasn't bragging. Her voice was purposely even, as though she was trying to tell him that her life was in danger without tipping off those threatening her. Obviously it wasn't something as simple as that. That's impressive. He didn't know if that was the right answer. When Naruto made a non-commenting noise, he assumed it wasn't exactly the wrong one. Perhaps Naruto wasn't expecting him to know what she was talking about, but was simply saying it out of necessity on her part. There was something to it though. He could tell. There was something to how closed off she was whilst on this particular topic. Before he could attempt to come up with a way of discovering the answers, they had reached his home. I'll see you tomorrow, Naruto. Okay. Get some rest. She grabbed his hand for a second, giving it a squeeze before letting it go and walking off. Bye, Shikamaru. He groaned, dropping his head as he walked inside. He wondered if Naruto would ever let him forget about his flu-induced rambling. With a sigh, he lifted his head back up, thinking over the last 2 days. Why are you smiling like that? Looking over sharply, he noticed his father sitting before the shogi board, clearly in the middle of a game with himself. He quickly removed the smile. No reason, really, I was just trying to help Naruto understand chakra. He's an idiot. At least he is willing to learn. Do you want to play around? He gestured to the board. Sitting down as his father reset the board, he fought to keep the grin from his face. It was worth all the teasing Naruto could dish out. He loved being sick. Chapter 15: Shikamaru's Long Day. After saying goodbye to Naruto, he had every intention of staying indoors and resting. However, once their game of shogi was over, his father reminded him of the ceremony for Lady Tsunade, which was to take place that afternoon. It had slipped his mind with everything that had occurred in the last 2 days. When they had arrived in front of the Hokage Tower, he was pulled away from his parents by Ino, who dragged him to where Choji and Asuma-sensei stood. Asuma-sensei commented that he needed to speak with Shikamaru after the ceremony, but before the boy could ask any questions, the elders stepped out on the balcony with Lady Tsunade to declare her Hokage. The whole village seemed to be rejuvenated upon Lady Tsunade's official appointment, but Asuma-sensei appeared slightly distressed. Once the ceremony was over, he instantly marched off, looking around at the masses. Shikamaru followed, mostly out of concern but partly because Asuma-sensei had not told him what he wanted to speak to him about. After assuring Ino and Choji that he would make sure their teacher was fine, he pushed his way through the crowd after the tall man. When he stopped suddenly, Shikamaru in his sluggish state nearly ran into him. He was able to sidestep him, viewing the scene that had caused Asuma-sensei to halt in the first place. Asuma-sensei's nephew was standing not too far in front of them, a sad but wistful smile on his face. Naruto was talking to him quietly, running her fingers through his hair. Whatever Naruto said made a wet smile appear on Konohamaru's face before he hugged Naruto tightly, burying his tearful face in her chest. Whilst rubbing Konohamaru's back, the blonde spoke to the boy, making him nod into her body. Naruto smiled as the boy resurfaced, allowing the girl to lead him away. He's a good kid, that Naruto, Asuma-sensei stated in a brittle voice. One day I will have to thank him for looking after Konohamaru for me. That boy worships the ground. Naruto walks on, and it's good to see that Naruto actually cares about Konohamaru in return. I think Naruto sees him like a little brother. He likes to tease him. Asuma-sensei laughed a watery laugh. That's good. Konohamaru always wanted a brother. Shikamaru tried not to wonder if the boy would be disappointed if Naruto was a girl. With how close they seemed, he doubted it, but he couldn't help the slight spike of fear he felt. Oh, meet me out the front of the Hokage Tower at 9 tomorrow morning, Asuma-sensei told him, getting a raised eyebrow in reply. No, I won't tell you why. Just be on time. Moments later his mother found him, demanding that he returned home so he could rest. She refused to let him get sick again. There was a slight smile on her face when he passed on Naruto's compliments for the cookies. When they returned home, he convinced his mother to let him lie on the grass in the sun. He had every intention of simply watching the clouds and maybe taking a nap, but other thoughts flooded into his mind. He thought over Naruto's behavior earlier when talking about how she had never been sick. She had clearly been speaking the truth, yet it was unnatural for someone to have never had the flu or any other illness like that. From there his thoughts moved to Naruto in the hospital. The way she had acted with Gaara. She had sensed him in Lee's room. The thought had plagued him for a long time. How had she known he was there? He had thought maybe it was simple sensory abilities, but it was more than that. She had seemed so territorial, so protective of Shikamaru as well. She had reminded him of an animal who had had an intruder come near its family. Then she had frozen upon hearing about how Gaara had a monster inside of him. She had thought they were the same. He, at first, had believed that the villagers had gotten it into her head, but whenever he thought back over those events he realized that wasn't entirely the case. There was something more to it. Gaara had talked mainly to her about demons. The redhead had barely glanced at Shikamaru. He had felt jealous at how they had stared at one another, even after he realized they were sizing each other up. They had connected in a way Shikamaru did not understand. In a way he never could with her. His mother had called Naruto a monster once. His father had called her a hero. How could two people from the same household have such different views on the subject? And why Naruto? Why was she a hero to some and a monster to others? And then there was the conversation he had thought was a dream. His mother and Naruto had made no sense to him when his head was fogged with the flu, but even now, with his head clear, he still did not understand. They had talked about his mother's team, and her brother. He had been told at a young age by his father how those 3 people died. His father had explained how the 4th was a hero for fighting the Nine Tails, how so many had lost their lives, and how if the beast was still loose the entire village would be gone. He had made it clear that the beast had to be locked up for everyone's safety, though where he had not said, even after Shikamaru's insistent questioning. He didn't know why his mother would bring them up to Naruto, who probably wasn't even born at the time. Hell, he had only been 18 days old the day the Nine Tails attacked. There was no reason for his mother to be hostile towards Naruto over the death of her brother and her team. Sighing, he put his hands behind his head. This puzzle was confusing him. He felt as though he had all the pieces, or at least all but one, and yet he couldn't seem to fit them together. The more he tried to fit them, the more they refused to go together. He had, Naruto never getting sick, having a connection with a boy who had a demon in him and was highly psychotic, and his mother hating Naruto for some reason to do with the death of her brother. It wasn't common for him to come across a situation that he couldn't solve if he tried hard enough, but this one was escaping him. It was as though his brain could see the picture but refused to accept it. Before he knew it, his mother was calling him in for dinner. She made it clear that he was to go to bed once he had finished. She was not going to let him become sick again and collapse in the streets. She even commented that Shikamaru couldn't hope for Naruto to find and look after him again. The way she said it was strange. It sounded as though part of her was hoping Naruto didn't, even if Shikamaru was sick again, and another part sounded grateful Naruto did in the first place. Having no reply to that, he simply nibbled on his food. His mother had yet again cooked him something mild, though his stomach appeared to be better now. His father simply reached over at Yoshino's words, grasping her hand with an encouraging smile. It turned out that the reason Shikamaru couldn't be late was that the newly appointed Hokage wanted a meeting with him. She wasn't the only one in the room. The Hokage's advisor, 2 chunins, his father, Asuma-sensei, and the 3 proctors, including the replacement for the final chunin exams, were also there. It was this last person, Genma, he was reminded, that made him guess what was going on. He had one of the largest says in the final exams. His father was just smiling at him when he looked back at him, clearly not willing to either confirm nor deny the situation. Instead, Shikamaru decided to scrutinize the one chewing on a senbon. Genma squirmed under the genin's gaze, looking over at Shikaku for help only to receive an amused expression in reply. Looking back at the younger Nara, Genma smiled, giving Shikamaru a wink. To Shikamaru it appeared that the man was confused at how to act in the situation put before him, but then he realized Genma had taken his staring incorrectly. Rolling his eyes in a very clear and disgusted way, he looked away from the idiot, turning his attention to the Hokage. He did not want some old man getting the wrong idea. He noticed, though, that his father was shaking his head at Genma, clearly thinking the man was as stupid as Shikamaru found him to be. The look Shikamaru had given the proctor had been suspicion, not interest, so his wink was misplaced and disturbing. The only one Shikamaru was interested in was Naruto, not that he was going to tell Genma that. It was obvious that Genma was just trying to mess with Shikamaru. Lady Tsunade finished looking back over the report in front of her before setting it down and looking up at Shikamaru. Unlike his father and Asuma-sensei, who was purposely closed off, and Genma, who clearly didn't have enough brain cells to comprehend the situation, Lady Tsunade was easy to read. The small smile she wore was enough for Shikamaru to know everything he needed to know. It was clear that she was only so easy to read because she allowed it. She had the same foreboding feel as Jiraiya the Toad Sage. Although she looked like a pretty, kind woman, there was something behind the relaxed yet formal posture she held, the sharpness of her gaze, the way her face was smooth, only reflecting the emotion she chose to express. The elders had not chosen her on a whim. She was powerful and not someone to be crossed. She spoke to him professionally, but it was clear that she was enjoying promoting him to Chunin. Part of him was glad that she was a Hokage that gained joy from such a thing. Another part of him couldn't help but notice the nervousness and fear that crawled into his body. The fact that once Lady Tsunade had officially promoted him, he was handed over to Genma to have his new roles explained to him didn't help. His father patted him on the back and Asuma-sensei told him they would get lunch after the meeting before Shikamaru went into one of the side offices with the proctor. Genma leant against the desk which had a box sitting on top, his lips pulled into a cocky grin around his saban. Shikamaru dropped into the chair furthest from the man, scowling. He could not bring himself to like this man, not after he was arrogant enough to assume the freshly made Chunin was interested in him. Apparently the hostile gaze had the desired effect, for the man cleared his throat and crossed his arms, suddenly appearing serious. The brunette could be professional when he needed to be, for he clearly and concisely explained the role of a Chunin. He could even tell when Shikamaru started to feel overwhelmed, for he stopped, making a few light-hearted jokes about how being promoted before the others in his year would send the girls crazy for him. Shikamaru frowned, his fear washing away his logic that usually controlled his mouth. "I'm not interested. Guys will go crazy too." The look that Shikamaru gave the older man made Genma move back slightly. "I'm not interested." The smile that spread across Genma's face made the Nara air uncomfortable. He felt like a cornered rodent with a very happy, very fat cat towering over him. "I knew it! I winked at you for fun, and the look you gave me told me everything. Kid, I like to class myself as a professional flirt. I know how to read people. If you're still single, obviously you're not very good at your job." Shikamaru scoffed, crossing his arms defensively over his chest. "Depends why you flirt, though. You, my friend, clearly only flirt with the one you're in love with." "I don't flirt." Shikamaru could feel his face heating under the amused gaze of Genma. "How did he work it out when he doesn't even know me? No one else has." To stop this line of conversation, the correct response would have been, "I'm not in love with anyone." Genma laughed. "Not that I would have believed you. So who's the lucky girl, or boy?" When he only received a hard stare in reply, Genma sighed, putting his hands on the desk as he leaned back. "All right, do you want to know what your job is?" "Yes, your job is to lead missions, educate the younger generation, fight in a battle whilst Genin stay in the village to protect civilians, but there is a more important one. On top of all that, your job is to work your hardest to ensure that your subordinates return to the ones they love as much as you love the one you won't name. I know it sounds daunting, but when you have someone to fight for, it makes you a better person, it makes you a better ninja. If you put your heart into a mission's success, it's more likely to work out in your favor." He let Shikamaru process his words before smiling. "You're lucky to have someone you love so young." "I never said I loved them. You just assumed that on your own." Shikamaru looked away from the man, his shoulders sagging. "It's not like they're interested in me anyway. There is no point in falling in love with them." "Hey kid," Genma said, making Shikamaru look back at him. He leant forward, winking. "Becoming Chunin will make them fall right over you. It's the vest." He reached into the box sitting on the desk, pulling out a navy green vest which he threw at Shikamaru. "Try it on, see how it feels. You'll be wearing it on your first date." Shikamaru rolled his eyes, standing up and pulling the vest over his short-cut jacket and net shirt. The material was stiff, having never been worn. He moved his arms across his body a few times, feeling the fit. The weight he felt wasn't entirely to do with the vest, but with the implications behind it. Once he became accustomed to the feel, he turned to Genma, asking if he could leave. The older man was definitely cocky, but he wasn't as big of an idiot as Shikamaru had thought. He had read Shikamaru rather well. When he exited the office, he saw Asuma-sensei and his father waiting for him. They were far enough down the hallway that there was no chance they had overheard the conversation he had with Genma. They both smiled at him, halting their conversation. His father clapped him on the back again, his grip on his shoulder tight but comfortable. "You've done well, Shikamaru." His dad sighed. "Your mother is staying at Aunt Aio's. Nishiko is sick, so Yoshino is going to help out. So we will have to celebrate your promotion as a family another night." Shikamaru nodded, understanding why his mother had to go to her friends. Aio was a civilian and suffered from depression. It had come as a shock to Shikamaru since his aunt was so bubbly and cheerful. She had been friends with Shikamaru's mother since they were children, something that earned her the title of aunt. Unfortunately, Aunt Ayo was having trouble getting out of bed in the morning after losing her husband in the invasion, who was a Chunin. The only ones who kept her functioning were Nishiko, her daughter, and Yoshino, who visited her each day to drag her out of bed and force her to go through her day, even if it meant more than a few tears. Tell Mom to send my love to Aunt Ayo. I am really sorry that we can't celebrate with you. His father's hand tightened. But I can teach you that new technique I talked about. I think you're ready. Shaking his head, he smiled at his father. I would rather Mum help Aunt Ayo and Nishiko than to celebrate. Well, before your dad works you into the ground, I am taking you and the team out for lunch. Asuma-sensei clapped his hands, smiling down at Shikamaru. Do you mind if I steal him, Shikaku? Only if you promise not to return him tattooed. Fine, but I can't promise he won't be drunk and covered in lipstick. The two laughed when they saw the mortified expression on Shikamaru's face. You two should not be friends, he declared before leading the way out of the building. His father separated from them when they arrived outside, Asuma-sensei and Shikamaru continuing on to the steakhouse. Clearly his teacher had organized the lunch ahead of time. He wondered if the others knew what the lunch was for, but when he arrived it was made clear they did not. They gawked at him until their teacher confirmed something that was obvious thanks to Shikamaru's new attire. The lunch was embarrassing, with his teammates laughing at the thought of him as their superior, but it deteriorated into Ino insulting Choji's eating habits, almost calling him the F word. He was able to stop her just in time, calming them down. He couldn't help but think over what Choji had jokingly commented. The vest probably didn't suit him, which meant that Genma was wrong. Although he had kind of already had a date with Naruto, so even if the vest had suited him it wouldn't be their first date. Besides, if his best friend found it so amusing that he made Chunin, he doubted that Naruto would fall over herself at the sight of him in the vest. Genma's words kept replying in his mind, annoying him more and more each time. He had hardly eaten anything, which was probably good since it left more for Ino. Choji kept shooting him looks though, when he wasn't distracted by food. Clearly he could tell something was on Shikamaru's mind, but he was kind enough to not say anything. Ino, however, who was also starting to shoot him suspicious looks, was not so kind. Before she could ask questions to which he had no answers, he excused himself to the bathroom, Asuma-sensei leaving for a mission only minutes before. As he went to leave the facilities, Ino's voice echoed through, reaching his ears. Oh, Choji, she sighed, making Shikamaru pause. You're so lucky that you don't have to worry about what or how much you eat. Let me tell you, being on a diet can be pretty tough. Well then why are you on a diet, Ino? Choji asked in his usual placid voice. We diet for one very important reason, Choji, so we can look as cute as we can for the boy we like. Ino's voice had taken on the gushing tone that usually meant she was thinking about Sasuke. But what if the person you like isn't into super skinny girls? Choji had a point. Naruto wasn't skinny like Ino. She wasn't overweight or unhealthy, her stomach was even flat, but she wasn't petite. Whenever he had to catch Ino because she had performed her mind transfer jutsu, she felt so light that it was almost as though Shikamaru would crush her if he held too tightly. Naruto, however, was solid. He could hold on to her without fear of her breaking, and she had the strength to hold him up when he needed it, such as when he was sick. Ino huffed. Well, in the first place, most boys aren't as fa. I mean, most of the boys I know like girls who look fit. Shikamaru tried not to snort with laughter at that. The two boys she was closest with were Choji, who was asking the questions, and Shikamaru, who was interested in a girl who very well could have been a boy. He peeked out from the doorway, noticing that Ino was holding herself in a way that suggesting she was going to sprout one of her wise facts about relationships. And that's true the other way around as well. She laughed. You might think of taking a little better care of your body, Choji, or you won't get any girls. Ino walked off, leaving Choji with a tight expression. Her heart was in the right place, but her brain wasn't. It had always been a sore spot to the bigger boy, what girls saw of him. With a small chuckle, Shikamaru looked after Ino's retreating back, drawing Choji's eye. She has no clue. Despite what most women seem to believe, men don't always go for the skinny girls. Most guys I know, they like girls with a little meat on their bones. It just looks healthier. He stepped out of the doorway, his hands in his pockets. Oh yeah, and the reverse is true too, you know? He winked, grinning widely. I bet anything she would be twice as popular if she put on a few pounds instead of starving herself. It crossed his mind for a moment that his voice sounded surprisingly like his father's at that moment. She should eat. He took a large, imaginative bite out of the air. His antics made Choji laugh. You're one hilarious guy, Shikamaru. And you're kind of a genius too. Huh! He hadn't expected that. That's right, just think about it. Even I can see that you're way more amazing than Sasuke or that Niji guy could dream of being. The words surprised him. Sasuke was the top of their class and always received attention. Even Naruto noticed him, which led to the unfortunate kiss incident. The memory of that event still caused an uncomfortable feeling to bubble in Shikamaru's stomach. He had never thought to compare himself to Sasuke or Niji, seeing as he always thought he would fall short. However, here was Choji, not only comparing them but saying Shikamaru far outdid the two. It felt as though a balloon had inflated in his chest, though whether it was a good thing or not he did not know. I never really thought about it like that before, he admitted. I'm just being me. That may be so, but you're the only student who actually became a Chunin in the Chunin exams this time. But I'm probably not as good a fighter as you are. I mean really, if I had been facing off against you I probably would have given up the fight. But earlier you heard Sensei tell me that all I do is eat, and that I should be training harder. Like I said before, Shikamaru cut over the top, not enjoying his friend doubting himself. He would trust Choji with his life and with the lives of those closest to him. Choji needed to realize that he was a great person, and a great ninja the way he was. There was no one as caring and compassionate as him. I'm just being me. And you should just keep being you. It's stupid to talk about all the things that you're not. He walked forward, putting his hand on Choji's shoulder and smiling. Hey, Asuma says a lot of things, but don't take him too seriously. Just live your life, eat your food and take things easy. See you later, I'm heading home. My dad's been making me nervous, talking about how he actually wants to teach me a new jutsu or something. Shikamaru, Choji called softly, making the other boy halt his steps. It looked as though he wanted to say something, not about what Shikamaru had said though. If it was, he would just speak. Suspicion crawled in Shikamaru's insides, yet he found himself pressing Choji. Well, what is it? Just good luck with your training. Blinking a few times, Shikamaru turned back around, walking towards the exit. Later. Whilst walking home, he noticed white sheets sprawled over the street, nurses rushing to gather them. Looking up, he noticed that one of the water towers had an entire side blown out of it. He stopped, wondering what could have caused such damage. The damage looked fresh, what with the water still dripping down the wall from the explosion. One of the nurses near him was muttering darkly about a fight. Whatever jutsu caused that must have had some force behind it. I never want to be on the end of it. He continued home, finding his father waiting to teach him. The technique was an extension of the shadow possession jutsu and actually utilized skills he had used on Naruto. However, instead of simply touching his opponent with his chakra, he was to control the shadows into taking the form of a hand to strangle them. He decided that he would have to be careful if he ever repeated the events of the other day with Naruto. He didn't want to accidentally strangle her with his shadow. The new technique wasn't that hard for Shikamaru to pick up, seeing as he knew the components already. Either way, he had to spend a few hours practicing until his father was satisfied enough to let him go. The moment he was let free, he went into the bathroom, stripping off his sweaty clothing. He enjoyed hot baths almost as much as he enjoyed cloud watching. So far, washing was the most pleasant thing he had experienced all day. He could feel himself relaxing as the heat from the water soaked into his skin. He savored the feel until the water turned cold, forcing him to wrap himself in a towel and leave the bathroom, throwing his dirty clothing in the hamper as he went. It wasn't until he was buttoning his pants that he noticed the shirt sitting on his bed. His mother had obviously folded it, and placed it there before leaving for NAIOS. With a sigh, he moved over to his bed, planning to return the flannel shirt to its rightful owner. Before he left his bedroom, though, he reached for his vest, hesitating. He wanted to leave it at home, but he was still on duty. He could be given a mission at any time, and until having notified the Hokage's office first, a Chunin is not allowed to walk around without their vest. Some people, mainly those of a clan, gain permission to wear something else, such as the Akamichis and their armor. Having no choice, he put it on, zipping it up. As he walked past the living room, he informed his father where he was going. When he reached Naruto's apartment, he was surprised to hear music flooding through the door. He had expected the blonde's taste to be towards the overly energetic music, but instead she was listening to instrumental. The sound of a quickly played violin mixed with that of the deep tempo of a drum. Truthfully, Shikamaru didn't have an ear for musical instruments, so other than the most prominent ones he was at a loss. To be heard over the music, he knocked heavily, his knuckles protesting the hard wood of the door. From inside he heard a bang, sounding like someone hitting a flat surface. "Look, Mrs. Homura, I'm not turning down the music, and we both know you don't have any guests over," Naruto yelled from inside, her voice taking on a growl. She threw the door open, glaring sharply at the one on the other side. Shikamaru had never seen that look on Naruto's face. Her eyes were narrowed, the blue hue darkened, her brow was scrunched, her shoulders tight. Part of Shikamaru wanted to step back in fear of this force standing in front of him. Hostile chakra washed off of her in waves. However, he found himself staying put, noticing the dampness to those eyes that held so much anger, and the way her hand, that was in a yellow rubber glove, clenched the door as though afraid of what she would do if she let go. Her brown shirt was drenched at her stomach, making Shikamaru think she had been doing dishes. It took Naruto a moment to process that it wasn't Mrs. Homura who stood at her door. Instantly her whole body relaxed, her face losing its look of anger in favor of a look of surprise and mild happiness. "Oh, Shikamaru, it's you. Come in." She stepped aside, letting the dark-haired boy walk into her apartment. She closed the door, walking over to her stereo to turn the music down to a pleasant buzz. "What's up?" "I just thought I'd return your shirt." He held it up, only to realize Naruto couldn't take it with the gloves on. Instead, he sat it down on the coffee table. "Thanks." Her eyes drifted down to his chest, a small smile creeping onto her face. "Iruka-sensei told me you made Chunin. Congratulations." "Thanks." Choji and Ino seemed surprised. They even went so far as to laugh. He followed Naruto into her kitchen, where she started on the last of her dirty dishes. It appeared as though he had interrupted her when she was nearly finished. "Why?" She looked over at him as she finished washing a plate. "You're a skilled fighter. It suits you." He frowned. "What does?" "The promotion. The vest." She smiled at him, putting the last cup onto the drying rack and pulling the plug. She snapped the gloves off her hands, draping them over the sink edge. "It looks good on you." He was fairly certain he looked like a very convincing owl at that moment. Thanks, Naruto." "Do you want a drink?" She went to her fridge, opening the door. "Oh, hey, I have juice." That must have been what Iruka-sensei put in here. He's always doing that. She filled 2 cups, handing one to him before walking into her living room and sitting on the couch. Shikamaru joined her, staring at the stereo. "So Mrs. Homura gets you that worked up, huh?" "No," Naruto sighed, putting her drink on the coffee table. "She knows I only play my music that loud when I really need to relax, yet she always insists that it disturbs her guests. She lives right under me." "Why did you need to relax?" Naruto looked reluctant to say at first, but next moment she took a deep breath, a sad look overcoming her features. "Sasuke and Sakura, I went to visit Sasuke in the hospital, and Sakura was there feeding him apple bits, and next minute Sasuke throws a tantrum and wants to fight me. It wasn't a normal sparring match, it was different, and when it was over Sakura tracked me down and blamed me for upsetting Sasuke and destroying both the water towers. I only destroyed one. Sasuke put his hand through the other with the Chidori he aimed at me. But it's not the fight that got to me. It was that Sakura blamed me. She has always only cared about Sasuke. At times I think that if it came down to saving my life or saving Sasuke from a serious injury that he could survive, she would choose him. And to make it worse, Sasuke refused to wear his forehead protector. He didn't think I was enough of a threat. He doesn't respect me enough. How am I meant to get the rest of the village to respect me if I can't even get a teammate to do it? As Shikamaru contemplated the rush of words Naruto had hurled at him, the girl wiped at her face, trying to remove all traces of tears. To refuse to wear your forehead protector was a large insult to your opponent. Sasuke knew this. Reaching over, Shikamaru grabbed Naruto's hand as it moved away from her face. If your team can't see what a skilled and powerful comrade they have, that is an issue they must overcome. It has nothing to do with you. Naruto, you are more powerful than I could have ever imagined you to be, and you fight with everything you have. You fought Neji the way you did because of what he did to Hinata. You have done more than enough to earn people's respect. You have mine. Naruto gave him a wet smile before the tears sprung up again. I thought Sasuke and I had actually become friends, and I thought Sakura cared about me. Am I stupid for hoping that? This was why Naruto could never feel for him. Sakura had had her affections since the academy days. The blonde had been racing after the other girl for years. He knew personally how hard it was to let go of old, deeply embedded feelings. He would lose to Sakura, the girl who never even bothered to pay attention to Naruto. Sakura never showed Naruto the care she deserved. If he could never have Naruto, the least he could do was make Sakura start acting worthy of Naruto's attention. Sakura didn't know what she had, but he was going to make her. Even if she was not interested in Naruto that way, she could at least show the blonde respect. Hopefully one day Naruto would wake up to herself and find a girl who returned her feelings. Hinata seemed to, though whether she knew Naruto's gender was a mystery. No, of course not. And they probably do care. Sasuke does seem to view you as a friend, and Sakura does seem to care. They are just too focused on themselves to notice. And Sasuke, he tried to think how best to word the next part. He's just annoyed that the bottom student has surpassed him. He's so used to being number one. Just wait, Choji or Shino will find a great girl to date before him, and he'll never get over how far he's fallen behind. His cheeky smile and playful tone pulled a smile from Naruto. He is going to hate it when he finds out that the second bottom student has made Chunin. Naruto laughed before pointed at him accusingly. But don't get cocky, 'cause I'm going to make Chunin soon as well. Yeah, and then you're going to become Hokage. He sighed, rolling his eyes at her, hiding how glad he was that her tears were drying. I've heard it before. And you'll become an elite Jonin. Naruto smiled at Shikamaru's groan. After I, as Hokage, order you to take the damn test, you lazy slacker. He laughed. That sounds pretty good to me. A sensation of boldness overtook his body, making him feel like someone else. That balloon was back in his chest, reminding him of how far he had came, that he was at least equal to Sasuke. Before he could comprehend what he was doing, he opened his mouth. Do you want to go get dinner with me? Every part of his being wished he could disappear through the floor. He had let Genma's words get to him. Just because Naruto had commented that the vest suited him did not mean that she would want to go on a date with him. There was no going back though. The words were out, and there was no way Naruto hadn't heard them. She had been looking at him as he spoke in a clear voice. Naruto looked surprised at the change of topic before she smiled. Sure, just let me change my shirt. It smells like dirty dishes. Shikamaru was in a state of shock as Naruto jumped up, disappearing into her bedroom. It took him a moment to realize that Naruto had left her door ajar, clearly not used to having guests, and that he was staring at the gap in a daze. He could see her trifling through her drawer, looking for a shirt. When she found a deep green one, she put it on the top of her dresser, grabbing the bottom of the shirt she currently wore. The shirt lifted, revealing flat, tan stomach, making Shikamaru realize what he was doing. He turned his head away so sharply that a jab of pain radiated through his neck muscles. He stared intensely at a book sitting on Naruto's bookshelf. It had a pink cover and was well worn. Focusing hard, Shikamaru was able to make out the words sewing on the faded spine. A hand touched his shoulder, making him jump. Naruto was back, her jacket in place, hiding her clean shirt. She cocked her head to the side when she noticed the red coloring to the boy's face. Ready to go? Yeah? Shikamaru jumped up, heading to the door. Once Naruto had locked her door, he led the way into the shopping district. So do you want to go to that barbecue place? Nah, I had that for lunch. How about we go to Ichiraku? I know you like that place. He honestly had no idea what to talk about as they walked, but then he realized something Naruto had said before. You destroyed the water tower? Naruto looked sheepish before laughing. Kakashi-sensei threw Sasuke and I into them. I had my Rasen gun active. That jutsu certainly can be destructive. My dad has just taught me a new jutsu with more of a fighting capability than my shadow possession. He put his hands in his pockets, fighting the urge to move closer to the girl beside him. So this one doesn't leave you vulnerable? Naruto didn't appear to be contemplating their proximity at all. She looked content in walking as they drew close to the ramen stall. No, it doesn't. If my opponent gets hurt, it doesn't appear on my body. He sat on one of the stools in front of the counter. Naruto smiled up at the woman who worked there, someone the blonde called Ayam. The two exchanged pleasantries, asking how their days had been before Naruto introduced Shikamaru. The woman was kind, like the man cooking, who turned out to be her father. Ayam asked what they wanted to eat, conveying the answer to her father as someone clamped their hand onto Naruto's shoulder. Hey, what are you doing? Kiba asked, smiling down at the blonde as Shino silently slid onto the stool next to his teammate. Having dinner, Naruto answered with a roll of her eyes, a silent duh clear in her tone. She absently scratched Akamaru behind the ear as Kiba sat in the seat next to Naruto. Kiba looked around Naruto, raising an eyebrow at Shikamaru. It wasn't often that Naruto and Shikamaru were seen together, so his confusion wasn't unwarranted. However, his presence certainly was unwanted. Perhaps he should have chosen a restaurant that allowed for some privacy on their date. Naruto, however, didn't seem bothered by the silent Shino and the loudmouthed Kiba sitting with them, though she may not have even noticed Shino yet. Is that Choji? Naruto asked, looking at a figure walking towards them. One of the flaps that usually hid the passers-by was caught to the roof, allowing the blonde a view of the last male rookie. She started waving to him, calling him over. When she had gained Choji's attention, she turned back to Shikamaru with a wide smile. Now almost all of us rookies are here to celebrate with you. If it wouldn't rise to many questions, he would have buried his face in his hands. Of course, Naruto didn't think it was a date. She thought he wanted to celebrate his promotion. So much for the power of the vest. She was being thoughtful though, inviting his best friend to join them. Choji, however, gave Shikamaru an odd look, as though he was conflicted about sitting down next to him. Realizing his expression probably conveyed some of his disappointment, Shikamaru smiled at him, agreeing with Naruto. So what are we celebrating? Kiba asked, frowning at Naruto and Shikamaru. And people call me dumb, Naruto retorted, moving back so that Kiba had a better view of Shikamaru. Haven't you noticed? Noticed what? Shikamaru is wearing a Chunin vest, Shino spoke up. Naruto jumped, apparently not having realized that Shino was on the other side of Kiba. Kiba's eyes zeroed in on Shikamaru's torso, making the Chunin squirm. You've got to be kidding me. Kiba groaned, gripping his hair. How did he get promoted and I didn't? I kicked your ass in the preliminaries. Naruto piped up, grabbing a pair of chopsticks as her order was put in front of her. Shikamaru laughed, enjoying the expression on Kiba's face. He followed Naruto's example and grabbed some chopsticks. The others ordered food as Naruto and Shikamaru dug into theirs. The group's conversation bounced between topics ranging from their training, to different ramen they like, to how the rebuilding was going. When Shikamaru noticed that his best friend was eating slower and less than usual, he decided to approach a particular topic to help Choji. I'm getting sick of Ino talking about her diet. Do the girls on your teams do that, or do we just have a really annoying one? Shikamaru asked, looking over at the three boys beside him, spotting how Choji's chopsticks stopped halfway to his mouth. Naruto nodded as he slurped down his third bowl of ramen. Kiba and Shino, however, looked confused. Hinata does not diet. Granted, she is not the biggest eater, but she will eat until she is full, Shino explained. I'm not surprised, Naruto commented, not seeming to notice the suspicious and hard look Kiba and Shino gave her. She's a beautiful girl, why would she? Sakura does, though she shouldn't. The two males of Team 8 relaxed visible before Kiba spoke up, a sly look on his face. Do you think Sakura shouldn't cause you like her look? No, it's not that. Naruto continued slurping her noodles, not noticing that she had the attention of all four boys. Each seemed to have a different reason to be interested in the conversation. Choji's eating habit was not too different from Naruto's, so her opinion on diets was important to him. Shikamaru had hoped for this. She doesn't need to diet, but she does, which affects our missions at times. More than once she has gotten a little lightheaded, or her chakra ran out too quickly. To me, as long as a person is healthy, it shouldn't really matter what size they are. And if a person demands you lose weight before they will pay attention to you, then they aren't worth it. Naruto hadn't looked up from her bowl as she spoke, meaning she couldn't see the large smile on Shikamaru's face. He shot a look at Choji, who was sitting up straighter. The bigger boy returned to his meal with gusto, ordering another to be prepared for him. It was good to know that Choji had someone he could relate to. Although Naruto appeared to have a low-fat content, she ate a lot. If she didn't train so hard, she would probably be the size of a house. But you do like Sakura's look, don't you? Kiba pressed with a grin that looked a little forced around the edges. You've been crushing on her since the academy. Shikamaru had to slap his palm onto Naruto's back repeatedly. The moment Kiba's words had rung through the air, the blonde had started choking on her food in surprise. She had looked shocked and inhaled sharply, something that was not wise when eating noodles. Learn to swallow your damn food, he yelled as Naruto clutched her chest, breathing deep. He had a sense of déjà vu. When Naruto could finally breathe comfortably, she looked at Kiba sharply. What the hell? No, I haven't. Really? It certainly appeared as so, Shino piped up, looking surprised, or at least he did to Shikamaru. It was hard to tell. You always sat with her when you could and talked with her. Naruto looked at the two boys from Team 8 before turning her gaze onto Team 10's two males. You really thought that? I just thought she would make a good friend, so I hung out with her. There was no way to describe the sense of relief and hope that spilled over Shikamaru at Naruto's words. The girl knew that Sakura wasn't good enough for her affections, that she hadn't earned it. Even if Shikamaru couldn't have Naruto, at least there was a chance that she would fall for someone who would appreciate her. Besides, Naruto added, accepting her fourth bowl of ramen, Sakura isn't my type. Oh, how so? Choji asked, digging into his new bowl of ramen as well. The tone he took was casual, but Shikamaru knew him well enough to know that there was more to it. He was eating slowly too, waiting to hear every word Naruto spoke. The blonde, however, shrugged. Too girly? So the dieting, the worrying about what she looks like, the gushing over boys, Choji rattled off, looking around his best friend who was too afraid to breathe in that instant. You prefer tomboys? Naruto laughed. You could say that. So you like girls with short hair, who take training seriously and eat healthy? Shino asked in a level voice. It dawned on Shikamaru when he noticed the interest the three boys were taking in the conversation that there was something he was missing. Why did it matter to them what kind of girl Naruto was into? He, of course, had invested interest. This was his chance to find out if he had any chance with the girl. However, his brain was failing him. He couldn't think of anything to say to approach the subjects of boys. No, not interested in those types of girls either. Kiba sighed loudly. What kind of girls do you like then? Maybe I can help clear things up, Tochi said with a smile, handing over Choji's next bowl. He seemed happy that Choji's appetite returned, and not just for the money he would be getting. Naruto, I'm going to name 4 adults, and I want you to name the one closest to your type. The boys can work out what that person has that Sakura doesn't. I'll name adults instead of your fellow students so you don't have to have any awkward conversations. Kurinai. Gross. Kiba yelped. Do you have to name my sensei? Thanks for letting me know who she was. Naruto piped up with a smile. Tochi ignored Kiba and continued, Shiz and Anko. Who? Naruto frowned. proctor for the second stage of the Chunin exams, Shino clarified, pushing his glasses back up his nose. The crazy lady. Got it. And Genma. The last name surprised Shikamaru. I don't know who that is. Proctor in the finals? The guy with the Senban. Shikamaru bit his tongue before he said anything bad about the man. He didn't want to sway Naruto's choice. Oh, him. Naruto answered instantly, only to receive 4 very shocked looks. She put her hands up as though in surrender. What? He's good looking. Yeah, but he's a guy, Kiba pointed out. Shikamaru's jaw had dropped the moment Naruto had given her answer. He easily ignored Choji's eyes that had slid over to look at Shikamaru. He had tried to tell himself not to hope for Genma to be chosen, yet he still had. It was fairly obvious what Genma had that Sakura didn't. I know he's a guy. That's what makes me choose him over the other 3. I'm not interested in girls. Naruto pushed her bowl away, finished and obviously full. But... Kiba rose to his feet, looking stunned and panicked. Have you ever kissed a girl? How do you know if you don't like them if you haven't? Have you ever kissed a boy? Naruto replied calmly. When Kiba shook his head, Naruto went on. How do you know you aren't attracted to males then? Because I know I'm not. Kiba huffed at the eyebrow Naruto raised. But what about if there was a beautiful girl who was interested in you? I mean gorgeous inside and out, would you go for her? No. But this girl is stunning and sweet and kind and cares about you a lot. Kiba appeared to be getting slightly frantic as he tried to change Naruto's mind. She's too nice of a person to break her heart. Why would you go for a guy if you can have her? As Shino pulled his friend into the seat Kiba had vacated, Shikamaru realized what was wrong. It was the mournful expression on the Aburame boy's face that allowed him to come to his conclusion. The problem wasn't so much that Naruto was only interested in boys. It was the fact that Hinata was a girl. A girl who was now in the same position Shikamaru had been in only moments before, except that it was clear that she had no chance. He felt for her, truly, but at the same time he couldn't remove the happiness he felt. I wouldn't just reject her, Naruto assured. I would explain to her that it's not anything wrong with her, or that I don't think she's good enough. I'm just not interested in girls. Honestly, if she was a boy, she'd be perfect from everything you've described. But I've never hidden the fact that I like boys. Lee wanted to fight me after the first Chunin exam because he thought I was after Sakura too, and I told him outright why I wasn't. The girl on his team was surprised. She and Niji were trying to tell Lee it was stupid to fight me, what with the second part of the exams the next day. Kiba's shoulders sagged, clearly realizing he would not be able to convince Naruto to fall for Hinata. It was kind of him to try for his teammate. It was unfortunate that it was inevitable for her to get her heart broken, but there was nothing she or anyone else could do about it. She had just fallen for someone who could never return her feelings. It was shortly after this bombshell from Naruto that they all started paying their bills and leaving for home. Before Shikamaru could reach for his wallet to pay for him and Naruto, the blonde beat him to it. She paid for them both, smiling at him. You shouldn't have to pay, it's your celebration. That's right, she thinks I asked her to dinner to celebrate my promotion. He decided not to dwell on this fact since at least he discovered that he actually had a chance with Naruto. His gender wouldn't be the defining factor. He waited for Naruto so that he could walk her home, ignoring the way Choji smiled at him and walked away, obviously not expecting Shikamaru to walk with him even though their estates were in the same direction. When they started walking, Naruto chuckled, drawing Shikamaru's gaze. Do you think they are going to make me pay for the water tower? Maybe. Oh well. I'll get Pervy Sage to pay. He owes me. Plus, he taught me the jutsu. Mind you, he apparently only taught me it because I look like the fourth who was his student years ago. Truthfully, Shikamaru had always thought Naruto looked like the fourth. Their hair and eyes were not common features, at least not in the leaf, so the resemblance was easy to notice. When he had first realized they shared features, a thought had crossed his mind, but he had decided he was not close enough to Naruto at the time to ask. Now, however, he felt he was. Naruto, I hope you don't mind me asking, but who are your parents? Naruto stopped, looking over at Shikamaru in surprise. I don't know. All the old man would tell me about them is that they were strong, kind, and that they died during the Ninetales attack. She pulled a pained expression, as though something occurred to her. Her hand rested on her stomach, making Shikamaru wonder if the topic was making her sick. Something didn't sound right to him. Wasn't Naruto born after the attack on the village? He trailed after Naruto, who had started walking again. It occurred to him that he didn't actually know Naruto's birth date. He had always just assumed that the blonde was younger than him, but in truth she might not have been. Naruto, when's your birthday? Looking over her shoulder with a puzzled expression, she answered simply. 10th of October, why? Blood rushed past his ears, deafening all other sound. He could practically feel everything sliding into place within his brain. His heart beat painfully in his chest, his stomach spinning so quickly that he felt as though the ramen was going to reappear. Looking over at Naruto, he tried to smile at Naruto as his eyes stung sharply. You're 18 days younger than me. 18 days exactly. His voice sounded hollow and desperate, as though he hoped Naruto would correct him, saying she was 17 days younger instead. Well, it'll make it easy for us to remember each other's birthdays, Naruto joked. He nodded, having to close his eyes from the pain behind them. I'm tired, he lied, so I'm going to head home. I'll see you later. Turning away before Naruto even had a chance to respond, he tried to not look as though he was rushing. He needed to get away. He couldn't be around Naruto, not after what he had discovered. He didn't know if Naruto was aware of what she was. He was fairly certain she did know, but if she didn't, and he stayed with her, he would say something. More than once he had to swallow the bile that crawled into his throat. By the time he reached the safety of his home, he was breathing hard, his heart pounding so fiercely that it made his head rattle. He stood in the hallway leading from the front door, trying to calm himself, but the more he thought about it, the more he became unsettled. At the sound of the front door slamming shut, Shikaku appeared, clearly wanting to investigate the noise. He frowned at Shikamaru, worry quickly molding his features. He walked forward slowly, as though approaching a caged animal. Shikamaru? He asked softly. Slowly Shikamaru raised his eyes to meet those of his father's. He could feel how wide his eyes were, no doubt unsettling the older Nara. Who put the Ninetales in Naruto? He whispered. Shikamaru. Who? He asked again, his whisper taking on a deadly growl as he frowned. His father took a deep breath, clearly thinking over the situation. The fourth Hokage. The fourth? You always told me he was a hero. Shikamaru felt tears pricking at his eyes, refusing to be blinked away. He's a monster! How could he do that to Naruto? Naruto has been mistreated, all because the fourth thought it was his right to turn Naruto into a prison. How could he do that? Naruto deserves better. Naruto is not a monster. Shikaku rushed forward, kneeling in front of Shikamaru, grabbing his shoulders tightly. He looked almost panicked at the pain and tears distorting his son's face. Shikamaru, he never wanted Naruto to be treated that way. Trust me. The third told me that the fourth wanted Naruto to be seen as the hero he is. He saved the village. He is strong enough to keep the Ninetales under control. Unfortunately, fear makes people act stupidly. Now tell me, will you treat Naruto differently now that you know his secret? He frowned heavily at his father, tears still trickling down his face. Of course not. Naruto is my friend. That thing will not change who Naruto is to me. He's had to suffer from the moment he was born because he housed the thing that killed his parents. I'm glad you see it that way. Shikaku smiled, grasping Shikamaru's face gently. I'm so proud of you for saying that. I've always hoped that when you found out the truth that you would be able to see past it and still see Naruto as the same person as before. I'm glad you are Naruto's friend. Will you tell him that you know? Does he know? That was a stupid question. Of course she knew. That was why she called herself a monster. Yes, Mizuki told him when he attacked Naruto and your sensei, Yumino. According to Yumino, Naruto took it fairly well, all things considered. We expected him to react extremely or violently, but Yumino must have talked to Naruto about it. So I ask you again, are you going to tell Naruto that you have discovered his secret? You are not allowed to tell others. The third made it a law. Contemplating his father's question, he shook his head, his father's hands allowing the movement. No, if Naruto wanted me to know, he would tell me. I'll wait until he is ready and let him know that I don't care. Shikaki gave him a large smile before pulling him forward into a tight hug. I am so proud of the man you have become. I want you to know that I will always be proud of you, Shikamaru. No matter what, but this moment is something I've worried about for a long time. He found himself hugging his father back just as tightly. Sniffling, he let his father dictate how long the hug would last, for he didn't mind the contact. The weight of his Chunin vest vanished as the puzzle that was Naruto settled into place in his mind. There was still a painful, tight feeling to his chest that he thought might never go away, but he would live with it for as long as Naruto had to hide the truth for her own safety. The last of his tears leaked from his closed eyes, falling onto his father's shoulder, making the man hold him tighter.